psychosocial definition of an adult is one who finds their way to give back. You find your way to be of service.
Welcome to the Tales to Inspire podcast. Before we get started on this episode, I would like to invite you to our community so that you can hear more stories to inspire change within your life and positive change within the systems in which we live. All I want you to do is to click on the subscribe button. Your comments mean the world to us with anything that's resonated with you, and I absolutely love your support. I can't wait to go on this journey alongside you. Thank you so much for subscribing. Let's get into today's episode. Today we go into a deep dive with Corin Bell.
I'm Corin Bell, and this is my Tale to Inspire.
Corin Bell, welcome to the Tales to Inspire podcast. Thank you so much for being with us today. So we'd like to introduce yourself, who you are, where you're from, and we'll essentially just go from there.
I'm Corin. I grew up in Stockport and I've lived in Manchester since I was 18.
So Corin, if we get to the age of 18, you was in Manchester at that time?
So I went to uni at Man Met. So I grew up in Stockport and then made it 5 miles down the road to go to uni, and did a politics with philosophy degree, which is essentially a degree in arguing.
Right, and what made you want to do that?
I like arguing.
You love arguing. So how did you find going to university? Was it what you expected it would be like?
I think I had a bit of a different experience. I was the first person in my family to go to uni, so I think a lot of maybe more middle class kids have that experience of when they're deciding where to go to uni, some of them will go, oh well, we're kind of all leaving town, so we'll disappear off to wherever. I was the first person in my family to go to uni, and also not many of my friends were going to uni, so I was terrified, if I'm honest. So I went to the closest uni I could find that would let me in, because it was really scary. And I don't think I really knew what to expect. Again, it wasn't like that experience I think some people have, where they grow up, like some kids when they're 6 know that you go to school and then you do A-levels and then you go to university, and some of them know that then you do a master's degree and then you do a PhD and then you never get a proper job. And that wasn't the experience I had. So, but it was great fun. It was great.
Just out of curiosity, in terms of being a student, because I get a lot of people talk to me about, oh, what's the point in going to university, and you don't see the value in it and all this kind of stuff. From your perspective of going to university here, what was the value that you took out of it?
I thought it was brilliant, but I'm 43, so I had a very different experience. I think my year at uni was the first year that they charged any fees, and I had to pay £1,000 a year, which my dad thought was ridiculous, was not happy about. But I think I felt incredibly lucky, and I still feel incredibly lucky that my mum and dad supported me in that, and I had the opportunity to have a lot of freedom. And I also, when I did go to uni and essentially do a degree that vocationally was useless, politics and philosophy, it was fascinating. I really enjoyed it. I'm really glad I did it. And vocationally, did it get me a job? Did it make a difference? Probably not.
Mm-hmm. But as long as you felt that you got so much out of it. Now, philosophy and politics, I want to go into the politics side of this. Why did you decide politics at that time? Like, what was the calling, or why did that connect with you?
I think I'm just quite interested in how things work. Like, I recognise now that there's a lot of researchers and campaigners now who are talking about the fact that we've never fixed our food system, and food is in a mess because people don't take a systems approach to it. We don't look at the whole food system and go, how is it all connected? How does it work? This is impacting that. This is where it's all going wrong. And that language wasn't around then, or maybe it was in some spheres, but people weren't, or I never found anyone talking about food in that way. But just that kind of, how does it work? What leads to what's going on in the background? It's fascinating.
I think there's a huge web, and trying to see that perspective and see that whole web is really difficult sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's easy to get lost in that web, just as a person in society and in our communities.
Yeah.
It's like, why is this happening to me? Well, actually, if you look at the bigger picture of the big web, you can see what's affecting you and what's impacting you. Sometimes get really overwhelming as well. But where does your journey go from there then?
So I left uni, very quickly shifted into the public sector. So I joined Manchester City Council and I worked at quite, just administrative low-level jobs, and then working my way up in homelessness, and then in housing standards, so in the kind of dog end of the private rented sector, and then trained as a project manager, and then moved to what was then called the Green City team, I think it was called, so the environmental strategy team. And I worked with Manchester City Council for, I think it was about 3 years in the environmental strategy team, and managed projects not around food, actually, around like adaptation to inevitable climate change and a few other bits. And then when we got that the May 2010 election, which was the one that ruined it all, that first awful coalition government that was actually a Tory government in disguise. And this is the fun thing about politics, like the Conservatives coming in said all sorts of things about just doling out money to local authorities based on need, but the Lib Dems and the Tories got in, Labour have been pushed aside, but Manchester and most of Greater Manchester remained a Labour stronghold, and Manchester in that 1 year from 2010 to 2011 lost £109 million from its budget, I think. Wow. And it was a fuck you. It was you still think voting Labour's fun? Have a few years of that and see how you feel. And all of the, we'd written a climate change strategy. It was the first year that like the climate change strategy for Manchester had been written, and we had all sorts of ideas and projects. And then in an economy like that, and what followed after climate change, at that point at least, this is like 2010, 2011, became a kind of fluffy nice to have that was not going to happen. So I took voluntary redundancy and left. And at that time, I think I just found myself in a bit of a handy niche. Like I was quite young. I was just me. I was living in rented shared houses. My cost of living was not very high at all, and there were loads of different projects that had lost funding for full-time permanent roles, but were managing to get bits of money for projects. So I just bounced around for about 5 years, just doing little, like it's cool now, it's called portfolio working. When I did it, it was just called cobbling together an income.
Just figuring it out. So what were you doing on those projects? Were you like managing the projects, or were you like, what were you doing on those?
It was all sorts, absolutely all sorts. It was good fun.
But you learned loads doing that as well.
Yeah, and it was like, I think the thing was, I didn't go into it with any sort of like pride or expectation about, I'm a senior project manager, or I'm this, I'm that. I think I was 30 at that point, and just went. So I did I did everything from, I did some training with ecology consultants who did lots of planning and surveying. I did some work with them around writing better plain English reports, writing reports that people would actually read.
Okay.
And what else did I do? I worked with a community farm, helping them develop a business model, so helping them develop a veg box scheme.
Okay.
I drove a mobile greengrocers around for a summer. That was great. Greengrocers on a van.
That sounds so cool. That is great.
I did all sorts. And some of it was, I did some quite high level project management and budget management and risk management, and then I was the Ring and Ride mobile greengrocer.
I think that's so cool. Because like doing different things is a great way to develop and learn.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's probably got you to where you are now in terms of the things that you've been through. But did you ever feel when you was in that time, you were doing so many different things that you weren't doing one thing? Like, does anyone ever come to you and say, like, who are you and what do you do? Like, what's your job kind of thing? And you're like, I'm delivering grocery in a van, and I'm also doing these ridiculous projects as well.
Yeah.
And you're just like, I don't know how to fit myself into that criteria.
I still feel like that now. Like if people ask me what I do now, I say I do good stuff with food.
I love that. It's the best thing. Oh man.
You know, I run a business. The reality of running that business means I do finance admin, and I have to, ring around places and renew our public liability insurance, and I worry about recording and reporting, and I go to networking events and do business development stuff, and I chair a working group for more sustainable and healthy food for our communities at the Greater Manchester level, and there's so many different things at the moment that I do, some of which are about the business and some of which are about campaigning and some of which are about projects and
it means to you though, it means something to you, right? And it's...
Yeah, and I'm fine with it.
Yeah.
I don't really need I think that's why I like the job title is really easy, because I'm the exec director of Open Kitchen, which I think, a lot of the time does just mean you just lead the business, and anything that needs doing, you do it. Yeah. So that kind of fits.
Yeah, it makes sense. And now you're talking about that 5-year stint that you had, where you're doing a bit of here, there and everything. What happened towards the end of that 5 years? Where did you start to decide you were going to go?
It wasn't a plan. You could say that about pretty much everything. It wasn't a plan. I think I had worked on so many different projects, and it wasn't a plan, it wasn't a choice of direction. I just found myself, I think, without really thinking about it, just working more and more on food related stuff. Some projects about food poverty, some projects about food sustainability, some projects very commercial, some projects very community. But I think I had just lent towards work that was interesting to me and started turning down stuff that was less interesting. And at a certain point I'd met loads of different people and seen lots of different projects, and I met the guy who started the Real Junk Food Project in Leeds, and I really liked the model and the mix. It was quite so at that point, and the way we started, it was using entirely food that would otherwise go to waste, and running in Leeds they ran a cafe, and they served all the meals on a pay-as-you-feel basis. And it felt really nice because it felt a bit more even, like it wasn't a poverty project. It was about sustainability, and the message was, I don't care if you're a millionaire or if you're street homeless, this food is perfectly edible and it should not be going to waste. So you can come in and everyone can just contribute what they can. So it felt like a nice way of bringing more people together. So myself and a few friends, campaigners, just people I'd just spent a lot of time in the pub with. I think at a certain point we possibly had too many pints and just went, we should start a thing. And it started as a little project in probably 2015. Beginning of 2016 we got a little bit of startup funding, and that was when we got Mary Ellen McTague, who is an amazing chef who's represented the north of England on Great British Menu and is just far more than we could have hoped for, took an interest and joined as our head chef. And we started doing little community pop-ups. So to start with, we had no kitchen of our own, we had no cafe, no restaurant. So we were working with a charity in Manchester City Centre, and using their kitchen during the day to prep, and then we were working with hospitality venues that either weren't, we'd do a pop-up supper club on a Tuesday evening when that venue wasn't open, and they'd run a bar and they'd take the wet sales, and we'd run a supper club on a pay-as-you-feel basis, and it's kind of gone from there. So over the years, it's all in all, from the start of an idea, it's coming up on 10 years now, and we went from doing pop-up supper clubs to, I think, 2017, Bruntwood, who are a brilliant property company in Manchester, they gave us a very reduced rent on a unit that was delayed for development. So they said, this is temporary, at some point we'll need it back, but do you want this? And we said, yeah. So we ran a kind of extended pop-up cafe. We were there for nearly a year, and that gave us a chance to really trial using all waste food and serving meals on a pay-as-you-feel basis. At the point that they needed that site back, which would have been kind of middle of 2018, I think by that point we decided that pay-as-you-feel doesn't work, or it didn't work in that
just
setting.
Because people pay nowhere near what is needed.
It's tricky, it's one of those things, and you look at the systems approach and just go, when you run a pay-as-you-feel, I think people want pay-as-you-feel to work because it would mean something about us, right? It would mean that we were nice. And the reasons that pay-as-you-feel doesn't work are incredibly complex and incredibly linked. So there's everything from, it's not that people aren't generous and it's not that they don't want to help. There's the maths that doesn't add up is, if someone's a middle-class consumer and they've got options, they can go and eat wherever they want. They come to you once a week if they really like you, maybe once a month if you're just kind of on their roster and they want to support. If someone needs you and they can't afford to go anywhere else,
every day,
they come twice a day.
Right.
So that maths doesn't add up. And then I think there's all sorts of things about that kind of consumer base that kind of want to support but actually don't feel particularly rich. The supermarkets have driven down the value of food. If you think now you get possibly still, it's been a while since I've been in a supermarket, I'm just going to admit that now, like £3 meal deals. So again, there's an expectation, that seed has been sown, that you should be able to get a sandwich and a drink and a bag of crisps for however much it costs now. And then you see adverts on the TV supermarkets going, you can get a bag of frozen fish and a massive bag of chips and a bag of peas for this much. Feed the family for this much. And it's really driven, a lot of big food businesses now are not, the prices that they're charging don't cover the full environmental and social impact of what they're selling. They're cutting corners left, right and centre and causing environmental damage and not covering the cost of that. So actually the idea, I think a lot of people still, if they go to a really good restaurant and get, small plates, for example, will look at, a small plate of absolutely beautiful anchovies. And I said that because I went to Erst about 2 weeks ago, and just go, how much for that? It's like 5 anchovies on that. And they're comparing it with the can of anchovies that they can get in Asda for 80p, and not understanding that it's not the same product. So I think there's a huge range of reasons that pay-as-you-feel doesn't work. And at that point, we just kind of had to accept that we needed to move on from there. So the model now, kind of come forward, how many years? About 5 years, maybe. And we've got an outside catering business. So we deliver catering all over Greater Manchester. And that is a mix of food that would otherwise go to waste and ingredients that we buy, and everything that we buy is locally sourced, sustainably produced. We support small independent producers. If anything's coming from further afield, like coffee, cocoa, that kind of thing, it's fair trade, it's organic. We try and find projects that are maybe going beyond those standards and supporting local communities. And the idea of that model is just that we're highlighting some of the problems in our massive food system, food waste being a huge one, and we're demonstrating what we think are some of the solutions. So we run a catering business, deliver all over Greater Manchester, and that's everything from simple sandwich platters and lunches right up to, we do weddings and canapé and vis events and
Is that all made
dinners.
in one place?
Yes, we've finally got our own kitchen. We've got a commercial kitchen now in South Manchester, and then we took over the cafe and bar at the People's History Museum in Spinningfields in 2021, middle of 2021, coming out of the pandemic. And we're the in-house caterer for People's History Museum. So again, that's weddings, conferences, workshops, all sorts. And and all of that trading activity subsidises the work that we do in the community. So this was kind of the balance that we struck. Pay as you feel meant the biggest thing really was pay as you feel was so unpredictable in terms of the income that it brought in that we couldn't possibly expand, and we couldn't offer people decent and stable jobs, which is not a sustainable way forward. So we decided to go, okay, we'll have set prices for all of the catering, but a lot of the work we do is with corporate, so they've got the budget, they can afford it. And then that subsidises work that we do in the community. So we provide lots of cooked and chilled meals, and most of those go to refugees and asylum seekers who are in hotels or bedsits or pieces of accommodation where they don't have a kitchen. We provide grocery parcels to families who are struggling with the cost of living, and we support smaller volunteer-led food banks. So we provide a lot of stock to, because we run the catering business, we've got vans, we've got walk-in fridge, we've got walk-in freezer, we've got a lot more storage space than a lot of the smaller volunteer-led community operations. So we kind of found a niche for ourselves that we could just, they're embedded in their community normally. They know their people, they know what they need, they know what they want, so we can just provide that. And we tend to always be a step removed. I think we found a good niche for us is we keep our focus on the food, and then we let the people who are actually embedded in those communities and actually experts work with those people. And
which makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
How does the food side of it, you said the food you get that food waste that's coming to you and then you reuse it, where does that come from?
Everywhere.
Really?
Everywhere. I think the important thing that most consumers don't see is food doesn't go to waste when it's mouldy or it's bad or it's going to make someone sick. As a general, the tricky thing about food is a business. It's essential for life, but it's a business. And if you're talking about our food industry, as a general rule, food goes to waste when it's cheaper to dump it than it is to keep it. The point at which you've entirely lost your profit margin on a piece of food, you don't keep carting it around the world or carting it around the country. And also our food system is very last minute. It's referred to as just in time because we're working with perishable products. So there's lots of perfectly edible fruit and veg that doesn't even make it off the farm, and we still don't have good statistics about that because no one bothers to record it, and farmers can't afford to record it. If no one's going to buy it, you don't even harvest it.
Yeah.
It never makes it anywhere. So there's lots of it's called pre-farm gate waste, and that's really heartbreaking because it's the most nutritious stuff and it's getting nowhere. And then every step you go through, like at the wholesale level, if you think about wholesalers selling to retailers, those retailers want that, if you're selling, again, fresh produce, it happens with dried produce as well, but fresh produce, if a retailer is going to buy something from the wholesaler, at retail level, they want that to be able to sit on a shelf for a week. So sometimes what you find at the wholesale level is the point at which food is perfectly ripe is the point at which it's gone too far from a wholesale point of view and you can't sell it. Right. I mentioned before we started, I was chatting to a wholesale company just yesterday who are big operation. They're bringing things in from all over the world, and what they predominantly sell, buy, package and sell is nuts, seeds and lentils, so kind of vegan plant-based protein. And they got in touch. The initial conversation was, we've got 2,590 gram bags of nuts, and they are within 3 months of their best before date. They can't sell them.
Wow. Because
a retailer doesn't want to risk not selling them. I mean, those best before dates mean nothing. There's best before dates on tea bags. My favourite one was we intercepted from going to waste some, what was it? It was like Himalayan sea salt. And on the front of the packet, very proudly said, Himalayan sea salt sourced from the blah, 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 real wordy, 10,000 years old. And on the back, it had a best before date that was 12 months. You just go, well, if it's 10,000 years old, then it's fine. What are you doing?
Makes no sense.
What are we doing?
It's no sense at all, right? Oh, man. So then, do they then sell that to you, or do they give it to you for free?
It can be a bit of a mix. If it's a commercial company and they are not environmentally conscious, then we will tell them that we can intercept that, we can stop it from going to waste. They can give it to us if they want, but we won't buy from them because they don't meet our buying standards. Right. With companies who are really environmentally conscious, sometimes they'll get in touch with us and say, we've got this product, it's going to go to waste, but they're a social enterprise, or they're already accepting a lower profit margin because they're trying to do some good in the world. So we'll negotiate with them and make sure that at least they're getting their costs covered and they're not making a loss. So it's a bit of a mix.
And where do you have a big storage unit or to store all this?
Yes, not enough, not nearly enough. But yeah, we've got a site. We're partnered in 2018 when we started the catering business. We partnered with Onward Homes, who are a housing association. So we're actually nestled in the middle of their office. The building wasn't built for them. It was built for a for-profit company, and the company that had it before had a subsidised staff canteen in there. So they have, when Onward Homes moved in, we're a housing association, so we're not going to subsidise a staff canteen for our staff because that would be, not a good use of public sector funds. So they just happen to have a commercial kitchen sitting in the middle of their office building. So we've slowly but surely we take over little bits of space.
I don't know who put that there. What a shame.
I don't know who installed that walk-in fridge.
It's so great. Man, they don't listen to anything. So then you've gone from this. Now, how big's the team?
I think the entire company now, so we've got the site at Onward Homes, which is the catering business, and the site at People's History Museum. And I think all in all, there's 15 of us, 15.
That's amazing.
It's still little.
But it's still incredible what you're doing. Now, how far in advance are you working in terms of the catering business and what you do?
Yeah.
Have you got bookings for weddings next year, or is it more like you're 3 to 6 months in advance?
It's everything. So we get corporates who just want, we're running a workshop, we're having a meeting, we want sandwiches, we want a lunch. They'll email one day and want something the next day or the day after.
Are you that agile that in a day in advance, or you can literally just...
Yeah, I mean, it depends if we've got capacity, if we're not already fully booked, and obviously if people don't give us any notice, there's a limit to what they can have. But with the way that we work, we tend to think of all our menus as frameworks anyway. Mm-hmm. So because we want to use up the food that comes to us that would otherwise go to waste, and also because we want to work with local suppliers and use what's seasonal, what's local, we do have some suppliers who will get in touch with us and say, we've got a glut of kale, will you rather than us phoning our suppliers and saying, I want this, I want that, sometimes our suppliers will phone us and say, will you please just buy some kale? And we go, yeah, we will, but not that much. So, for basic example, if a corporate customer says we're running a workshop next week and we want a simple sandwich platter, you say, okay, well, give us how many people and tell us your dietary requirements, how many veggies, how many vegans, is anyone allergic to anything? And then within that, we will deliver a sandwich platter with this many different fillings that meet your dietary requirement.
Right.
And some customers want to know in advance what that's going to be, and some customers want to get a little bit more selective, which is fine, but sometimes there's an extra cost involved in that, particularly if they want to buy meat, because we do buy meat, but it's all higher welfare and local, and it costs more. But we have some customers who love working with us because it's different every time and it's fresh. It's it's prepared by chefs, and they like the sort of ready, steady cook Russian roulette of it. You don't get from us those really boring sandwich platters that are like, oh look, it's ham and cheese.
And that bread looks like it's been there for 12 years and it still looks newer than it did when you first put it there.
Yes.
So do you want to scale this? Are you happy with where it's at? And if you do want to scale it, which side of the business do you want to scale? There's so many questions I have on that side of things.
Food business is tricky. You do get it. I think it was more of a trend pre-pandemic, but it's still happening with some brands. You get that, you've opened one and then all of a sudden you'll open 3 and you'll open 5 and and then you go, we want to be national, we're going to open 50 of them. And actually, for me, if you're doing food well, it's local. You know, it is. When people talk about scale and growth, you know, a lot of the time, like for me, the last 14 years, the whole of this shit show of Tory governments, none of them actually understood economics, and none of them actually understood our economy. Like there's a brilliant group called Steady State Economics, and their pitch is growth for growth's sake is the sensibility of cancer. Because if you just grow uncontrollably, that's not growth, that's proliferation. That's, you know, it tends to be incredibly damaging for the system, as in, you know, a cancerous growth is incredibly damaging for the body. So that assumption that growth is good at any cost is really dangerous and really stupid and really simplistic. What the last government didn't seem to understand, that I hope maybe this government does, is that the vast majority of the businesses in our country are small to medium enterprises, and they're incredibly valuable. And if you think about if you've got one massive company with, let's call them Starbucks, with hundreds, thousands of tens of thousands. I don't know how many Starbucks are there in the UK. Probably there's like 6, 7 in Manchester city centre. So you've got some shareholders, most of whom I'm guessing won't even be in this country, might not be on this side of the planet, but you know, certainly aren't in the north of England. And you've got hundreds of thousands of people toiling for that company, and all of the value, all of the profit just gets sucked out of our city region and ends up in the pockets of shareholders, so that some knobend in China can decide whether he needs a third speedboat. Whereas if you've got a huge number of small independent businesses, you've got a massive number of people who are passionate about what they're doing, and you're keeping that wealth that you're building within the local community so that it can feed back. That, to me, is a positive economy. So when people talk about scaling or growth, I'd rather see replication. I'd rather inspire other people
to do the same,
to start their own. Like the Unicorn Grocery in South Manchester, for me, is just... that's Mecca, that's the pinnacle.
Okay.
They've done it, they've won. You know, managing to run something that universally, holistically good in this bonkers world is, you know, I think it is magical. And they, like loads of people over the years, and they must have been going for 30 years by now, and loads of people over the years have said, why don't you open another one? Why don't you open 10? You know, we need more of this. So what they've got on their website is a section called How to Build Your Own Unicorn, and they provide everything and just say, no, this is the scale. Like, we can be local, we know our community, we can predict what people around here will buy and won't buy, and that helps us reduce waste, and we've really got it nailed at this scale. And actually, once you start thinking about growth and that becomes the aim, you lose that balance.
It's that preciousness of the fact that they are the community and they are part of that community as well. So if they try to grow it, it's my brother-in-law actually said something recently. He said he has his own business, creates furniture, beautiful. And I said, well, mate, your profit margins are amazing. You're doing it incredible. It's all for himself, and he's the only person there. I'm like, why don't you get people involved? And he's like, why do I need to?
Yeah, I'm happy.
That was it.
Yeah.
I'm happy, and I'm creating happiness for others, and it's the perfect thing for me.
Yeah.
And I was like, holy smokes, I've been brought up in this world where we never talk about what's good for you, and that just simple happiness. Where is your happiness, and where's your boundaries for that? As opposed to more, bigger, better, and it's just, it doesn't stop, and then you just get exhausted on that.
And it is I don't feel like anyone, like I do, you never blame the individuals, you know, it really is a don't hate the players, hate the game situation, but no one seems content anymore. You know, I get this drive to consume, just to buy more stuff and, you know, buy more and more clothes that don't last and throw them out and go and buy new clothes, because it is that, I can't remember who it was. It was someone, it's probably like Anais Nin or someone like that, said No, it wasn't him. But someone said, like all of the problems in our society can be boiled down to man's inability to sit in a room quietly and just like stare at a blank wall. And it is that, you know, it feels a bit like at the moment we've created a society, you know, we've had that whole like marketing as an industry has kind of worked out that, hey, we can make them buy more. Hey, we can make them buy twice as much. Hey, we can make them buy 4 different products. And now there's this kind of psychological need. It's almost like if you ever just stop, like, I don't know what we worry will happen.
Yeah. People are scared of that.
Yeah.
Like really scared.
You've got to, you know, we've been brought up to believe that a very valuable function that we serve in this society is consuming. It's our job. We are consumers. So we've just got to more. There's a brilliant, really simple psychosocial theory that I like that just goes, children need, you know, babies particularly, the younger the child, the more they need and the less they can give. You know, babies just cry and scream and they just take and take and take. And that's fine. That's, you know, that's where they are. That's what they do. And then as they get older, within this lovely simple theory, the psychosocial definition of an adult is one who finds their way to give back. You find your way to be of service. And one of the tricky things about our modern society is if you think about a lot of the jobs we have to offer people, you know, if you work in a call centre and your adult, you know, kind of income generating activity, it's basically spending all day trying to sell people shit that they don't need. How are you ever meant to feel like you are of service to our society? So you kind of forget that. And I do think, like, I speak to people in their 20s, 30s, some people who are a lot older as well, but particularly people who are in their 20s and 30s. And there's just something, like, psychologically, they don't feel like adults. They still feel, and I don't mean this in a blaming the individual way, I really don't, but they still feel kind of like greedy little children. You know, like those people that can't tolerate queuing and threaten to sue people if anything goes the way they don't like, or, you know, it feels like a child having a tantrum, and it feels like just an inability to accept that you might just have to wait a little while, or that, you know, the really tricky secret to hard work is that it's hard fucking work.
Well, that's the other thing about your degree was philosophy, right? And if we don't have a philosophy or a depth to our life that gives us a foundation and a broader perspective and an understanding of who we are and strong values, you see what we see in every walk of life right now, where people don't give a damn and they are just consumers being busy fools, essentially. Wow, we've got into so much here.
We've covered it.
But the thing is, right, there's hope. You know, there's hope.
Definitely.
And we have to speak to that, because as much as there's young people and the society, we're built in a system that isn't built for us. So let's change somehow. I have no idea how this is going to happen. Maybe in 5 years' time, you can interview me, Corin, and you'll be like, how did you change the system? I'm like, no idea. It's that one conversation we had. But essentially, if you're in a game and that game's there to help you win, it's so much easier.
Yeah.
And at the moment, it's not. The system's not built for us, when I say winning, for us to be happy and to support other people's happiness. At the moment, it's at the expense of other things. And that just doesn't make sense. So there's loads to this. There's loads. How do people find out about Open Kitchen? And yourself, if you like.
We have a website, which is very modern of us. I was being teased the other day for being an old woman and not understanding memes.
I'm with you on that, by the way. I am so lost.
Just someone sent me a picture of something, and I just said, I don't know what this means, and just got an answer back that said, okay, Grandma.
My partner Mel and her brother, they only communicate in memes. And then she's like, what do you think to this? It's so funny, isn't it? I'm like, my head's gone, I have no idea.
What it means.
Yeah.
I like words.
Yeah,
Instagram
words.
doesn't make sense to me, because my head my language is words, and I think a lot of people now are just communicating in pictures. Anyway, we have a website which is openkitchenmcr.co.uk. I'm on LinkedIn, and I do a lot of posting about issues and food strategy, and I'm very happy to connect with anyone. And we're on social media. I'm going to be honest, we don't have the most massive presence on social media because I do have a team full of people that are not that bothered about social media. But we're on social media at Open Kitchen MCR on Facebook and Instagram and whatever Twitter's called these days, but I don't think we really use that one.
Amazing. Well, before we go into our quickfire questions, and then I'll ask two questions.
Oh God, there's another section.
I'll ask two questions we've asked everyone.
Section.
We've not finished yet, but it is quickfire. I just want to say thank you, honestly, and it's not even thank you for sharing your story. I mean, you've stood up within your community and stand up. You've stood up for your values. Sometimes that's really hard. I think it's just really, really difficult to be, which is really hard to say, isn't it? But being you and just standing up for what you believe in. So thank you for doing that, because it's hopeful for the rest of us. It's like really hopeful. I'm going to go home to them like, right, a new burst of energy. I know it's the weekend, but I am going for it.
Grab a spade. Go plant something.
Boom. What are we planting? I have no idea, but I've been given these seeds. It's going to go into something.
I've been told I've got to dig up some concrete. You're going to get arrested this weekend.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that. And we all know why. The evidence is here. Amazing. So the quick fire questions, the way this is going to work, Corin, is essentially I'm going to start a sentence and you're going to finish it, if that's okay.
Okay.
We don't have to explain any of the reasons why you come up with that answer. Okay. Life is about?
Mission.
Being sustainable should?
Be normal.
A fair society can?
Do anything.
I love that. True education should?
Involve digging.
I love that. It's amazing. That's so good. If you could give yourself advice when you first started your entrepreneurial journey, what would that advice be?
I wouldn't. Learn by living through. I wouldn't go back.
Oh, I love that. Learn by living through. There's so many gold pieces of gold in this. Amazing. If there was a government rule that you had the opportunity to change or to implement, and it was your government rule, what would it be?
I'll send you a list.
Oh, really? Okay, go for it.
Just so many of them, so many government policies. The one that's really annoying me at the moment, I've got, there's a friend of mine who's very senior at DEFRA. And we did a little learning exchange, and I got to spend 2 days following him around at DEFRA and go to all of his meetings. And one of my questions was, who is going to, so you've got the civil servants and then the ministers, the elected humans. And I was kind of saying to him, okay, so we know exactly what we need to do. We need all of this land that we've got dairy cattle and beef cattle and lamb grazing on, we need to transition that to growing, fava beans or, beans, lentils, more vegetables. And which government minister are you going to get to stand up and say, Britain, we all need to eat less red meat? And he was just like, no one's going to stand up and say that. You go, well, why? But we know we need to do it, so why? And he just said, who's going to elect that guy? Like, that's going to be wildly unpopular. So there's 1,000 policies I would like to change. I'd like to change the entire way our government works. Proportional representation would be very helpful right now. And
very simple. That's obvious, isn't it?
And
it's
easy
so obvious.
peasy.
Yeah.
Why aren't we doing it? Let me think. But I think in the broad principle would be, A, pay them a lot less. Don't let them take as many expenses. And if you're not there for a values-based, mission-based reason, like if you're there, it's like the growth thing, but it's power. You're there to get elected because control is nice, If you're not there for a values and mission-based reason, then
you shouldn't be there. I love it.
So sack them all.
There we go. So a great rule. The last point I want to ask on the quick fire is, how much of where you're at right now is due to luck, and how much of it is due to your own hard work?
Random, 50-50.
50-50.
It's just like, because it is a journey, isn't it? You some of it is you work really hard and decide you want things, and sometimes there's just opportunities, or sometimes something doesn't work out for you and you just end up going in a different direction.
And it opens up another door.
Yeah.
Amazing.
We're not mentioning Gwyneth Paltrow movies, though, are we?
Well, you can mention whatever you want. Just out of curiosity, I wasn't going to go into this, but do you have any like places that you recommend people to learn more about the things that you've talked about today? So sustainable food, sustainable living, anything like that. Is there any like podcasts or blogs or books or anything that you would recommend?
Yeah, there's loads. As a good starting point, there's a brilliant social enterprise called Ethical Consumer. They actually started in Manchester, they're based in Manchester. So ethicalconsumer.org, I think an annual subscription it's only about 35 quid, and you can get on their website and it's everything that you might want to buy. They go through and review based on everything from investment in fossil fuels, environmental sustainability, how are they treating their staff, what's their supply chain like, loads of other factors like politics or any, there's some companies in some big meat companies in South America at the moment that are literally controlling governments. So Ethical Consumer is great because you can just as a person in the world, you can go and log on and look at supermarkets. If you want to buy a washing machine, who should you bank with? Right, okay. Everything, and clothing, high street clothing, and they rank from worst to best. And, again, it's not about trying to be perfect. Like, I think they've just changed it. The score used to be out of 20 and no one ever got 20.
Right.
And I like that because nobody's perfect. Mm-hmm. But they banned it, so they've got green at the top. These are the guys who are really trying and doing their best, amber in the middle, and then red at the bottom. So even if you just went and logged in and for one thing, just went coffee, and just went, I'm going to switch my coffee buying from a company that's in the red to a company that's in the amber. And then you go back next week and go crisps or, the high street, supermarket, I'm going to change my supermarket. Or you could just go one product and go, I'm going to switch from this brand to that brand. And they're great. And then Sustain are an amazing organisation that campaign for, it's all about food and growing and nature and ecology and healthy sustainable diets, and just things like signing up to the Sustain newsletter just to keep you aware of maybe like they post and send emails out about what the government are doing and policies that you might want to email your MP about, but also just great projects that are going on. Some of it's just really inspiring. Mm-hmm. It's just nice. I think it can be a bit depressing in this world at the moment. And sometimes it's just great to get on some mailing lists where you'll see some great people doing really inspiring, good things.
I think I guess it's more Tales to Inspire. It's kind of what we do is essentially is that seeing someone else do it helps you realise there is a pathway for it, yeah. And it is possible. It's like having role models when you're younger, but you don't have to have a role model, but it does help.
Yeah.
So yeah, amazing. Well, wow, the last two questions, I promise. Okay. Now, these are the questions. I've asked 164 people these two questions. So, Corin Bell, what is your definition of the word inspire?
Lighting a fire, I think. Just like there's something in there when you feel inspired. I think physically in your body, you feel a bit different, and I think it creates an energy that hopefully creates some movement.
I love that spark that get something going.
Yeah, I think you can physically, you can feel it, can't you? You feel physically different and more energised.
I love that, definitely. And my final question, the last one, promise of the day, is if you were to live your best life, your most fulfilled life, and you got to your 90s or your 100s or whatever, and you're looking back on that, what is it that you want to have really impacted or achieved during your lifetime?
Ooh, wow. That's a really good question. I haven't got a clue. Because I think it changes as the world changes, and I think I've got ideas now about what's needed, but I will change as I get older and the world will change as I get older. I think sometimes it feels like it's about sustainability, but actually I feel more and more like it's just about fairness. Like it's not fair at the moment. The world is not fair, and that pisses me off. So I think calling people out, I would like some people who are currently making huge amounts of profit to have to take responsibility for that and to be fairer, and I would like some people who have been shit on and had a really hard time to, in whatever way suits them, to feel empowered and to have the agency to actually drive their own lives.
Corin Bell, thank you for being on the Tales to Inspire podcast, mate. That was so cool. Thank you for watching today's episode. If you enjoyed today's episode, then please leave a comment in the comment section below, and we cannot wait to see you for our next episode.